This video contains numerous spoilers for the Touhou Project franchise, especially for Touhou Kanjuden, Legacy of Lunatic Kingdom, and Touhou Eiyasho, Imperishable Night, as well as some of the manga and short stories. Furthermore, one of the game's endings will be discussed. The Touhou Project games involve battles with all kinds of fearsome demons, spirits, and even gods. Often, the balance of the world itself is at stake. Not that the hapless humans of Gensokyo are even aware of it. Most fights and arguments are settled with an ultimately harmless Danmaku battle. And even the bitterest rivals can find peace over a shared bottle of rice wine or pot of tea. Grand ambitions are cast aside. And while Gensokyo grows and changes, the status quo is ultimately maintained, or changed slowly enough that life can continue on. Not everyone in Gensokyo has such a happy life, however. Junko's story is one of tragedy, loss, revenge, and a desperate refusal to let go of the past, for her pain was all she had left. Now, I've been a huge fan of the Touhou Project franchise since I first found out about it in 2010. I was drawn into the amazing soundtrack first, then discovered the vibrant fan community. I soon began exploring the weird Japanese stuff side of YouTube, which in turn led me to websites like Nico Nico Doga. I learned about a ton of other franchises and Japanese-only media never brought into English. I began downloading the Touhou games. I still suck at them, 15 years on. And I started to learn more about the setting. Some of that learning was from my own experiences, playing the games and reading the stories, but a lot of it was absorbed passively, through the mass of memes, videos, and jokes that were constantly being created, translated, and spread by fans from around the world. I often talk about the games and the setting with my friends, but with decades and decades of content to go through, it can be a little daunting to start. Personally, I think the best place to start is whatever looks interesting to you, so I thought I would share a character that I'm quite fond of. After all, I have no way of knowing what you personally will find interesting. But I certainly can share the things that I like myself, and maybe you'll like them too. Touhou Kanjuden, Legacy of Lunatic Kingdom, released in 2015, is the 15th mainline game of the Touhou Project franchise. To quickly summarize the game's plot, the protagonists respond to a Lunarian invasion of Gensokyo. Besieged on the surface of the moon by a vengeful Junko and utterly unable to repulse her invasion force, the Lunarians instead launched a sneak attack on Gensokyo. Using a machine not unlike the lunar lander, they began purifying Gensokyo, rendering it lifeless and barren, like the surface of the moon they call home. This, in turn, forces our heroines to take action. At first to try and stop the invasion of Gensokyo, but then by lifting the siege on the lunar capital. The rest of the plot isn't immediately relevant to the story of Junko, however, so we'll set it aside for the moment. When we do finally reach her, the final boss of the final stage, we learn why she's even begun her attack on the lunar capital in the first place. Junko isn't after the Lunarians as a whole, but rather she is after a specific Lunarian, an immortal known as Chang'e. Chang'e is a prominent figure in Chinese mythology, appearing in a variety of tales from regions all across China. But within the canon of Touhou Project, she is a Lunarian who took an elixir of true immortality, the Horai elixir. This is a grave, unforgivable crime in Lunarian society, and she serves an endless prison sentence for her crime. This is confirmed in Chapter 2 of the official manga, Touhou Bogetsushou, Silent Sinner in Blue. Now, we know very little else about Chang'e within the Touhou canon. Much like her real-world mythological counterpart, she had a lover named Hou Yi, who we'll discuss alongside Chang'e. Now would be a good time to step aside for a moment and talk about the real-world mythology and legends surrounding Chang'e and Hou Yi. Now, do understand, as with all mythology, different regions have different tellings of the same story. You may know a version of the story that is drastically different from the versions I'll be mentioning here, and if so, please share it with us in the comments below. We may learn some new insights together from your input. Many tellings of the tale begin something like this. In the distant past, there were 10 suns and 12 moons. These were all brothers and friends, and were meant to take their turns, one after another, proceeding across the sky, bringing day and night to the people. However, the brothers and friends grew lonely, being separated from one another. Bored with their labors and longing to be together, the stars all came out at once. This caused intense heat and light to scorch the earth, scouring the land with intense droughts, and causing wildfires to spring up everywhere. Hou Yi rose to the occasion, a natural-born hero, or so the legends say. In some tellings, he used a spear or a pole to knock down the stars one after another, but in the most famous tellings, he used his bow to shoot down the stars themselves. In some versions, he was rewarded by one mythical emperor or another for his valorous deeds, and in other versions it was public acclaim that caused the people themselves to reward him for his supreme skill, proclaiming him as their king. Either way, it leads to Hou Yi obtaining a precious elixir of immortality. Now here too, the legend splits off once again. In some cases, Hou Yi becomes a cruel tyrant, killing the king and stealing his beautiful wife for himself. He rules over the people with an iron fist. Chang'e, fearing that Hou Yi would become an unstoppable monster, steals the elixir, swallowing it, and keeping him from using its power for evil. She ascends into the heavens and becomes a goddess of the moon. The people honor her legacy every lunar festival. In the end, Chang'e languishes on the moon, wanting to spend eternity as close as possible to Hou Yi, but unable to remain on Earth, as she is now a goddess. In other tellings, when Chang'e ascends to divinity, she is cursed by the other gods for her crime of stealing immortality. The curse turns her into a frog, and she is forced to make elixirs for eternity, her punishment unending. Indeed, in Toho Project, Chang'e is, to this very day, still serving out a prison sentence in the lunar capital. Let's get back to Toho lore. How exactly does Junko fit in with Chang'e and Hou Yi? Well, we get the answer from one of the ending slides. If you clear the game as Raisen and get a good ending, Eren drops the following lines.
There is a certain person in the lunar capital that Junko detests. The reason for this is quite complicated. But that person is the wife of Junko's husband. In the past, her husband was responsible for killing her son. So, she got her revenge by killing him. This man's wife had an evil gift, and the wife is none other than Chang'e.
Now this is quite the revelation. Chang'e and Junko were, according to Eren, each married to Hou Yi at one point in time. I was confused myself at first, but to be clear, the original Japanese does indeed state, Kanojo no otto no tsuma ga sono hito nan desu. Kanojo means her, otto means husband, tsuma means wife. No is a possessive grammar particle. Eren is clearly stating, her husband's wife, Kanojo no otto no tsuma, which, from context, means Junko's husband's wife, Chang'e. Hou Yi himself is known in legend as a slayer of not just the 9 extra suns orbiting the Earth, but also a number of divine beasts and mythological creatures. This semi-mythological, semi-historical Hou Yi was known for killing a king and stealing the king's wife for himself, murdering the king's son in the process. Now, I won't say it's impossible that Junko's son could have been from a prior marriage, Hou Yi's stepson. But a small diagram shown by Aaron during Raisen's good ending implies that Junko's child was Hou Yi's own son with her, making his act of murder all the more vile a betrayal. One thing that remains unclear is when exactly Chang'e and Junko were each married to Hou Yi. I have personal theories on the matter, but these aren't backed up by any evidence. Just vibes. I believe that Junko and Hou Yi were married before Chang'e and Hou Yi were married. Junko and Hou Yi had a son together, at least one. At some point, Chang'e and Hou Yi began an affair. Whether this affair was based in genuine romance, or whether this affair was manipulation of Hou Yi by Chang'e in order that she may get her hands on his elixir of immortality, who can say? That would provide at least some sort of motive for killing what we can only presume is his own son. As well, this would give Junko a very, very good reason to blame Chang'e specifically for her part in the murder of Junko's son. If it was a marriage based in love, it certainly was not by the end. After the murder, Junko was left alone and devastated. Junko took immediate revenge by killing Hou Yi, and she wants to take revenge on Chang'e, but she cannot. Not in the same way. Chang'e is not just divine, but a Horai immortal. No matter what Junko does to her, Chang'e has no choice but to endure for all of eternity. She can't die, even if she wants to. So, now we have a rough idea of the events that gave birth to Junko's grudge. Regardless of how the grudge first formed, Junko isn't interested in explaining her motivations to us. Hou Yi died nearly 2,000 years ago, and Chang'e has only ever been mentioned by other characters, never appearing in person herself. In the end, all we can really do is take an educated guess. In order to exact her revenge, Junko besieges the lunar capital. The Lunarians refuse to give Chang'e up to face Junko's endless fury. While the Lunarians do prevent Junko from getting to Chang'e, Junko has no real need to kick down the gate, not when she can simply lay siege. Now is a good time to talk about Junko's special power. Junko has the ability to purify anything. This is a type of spiritual alchemy, and is not unlike chemical purity. It works on a conceptual level, removing anything undesired in the target. Junko first used this power on herself. She removed her grief, her anguish, her pain, even her true name is gone. She's the only boss character who lacks a title under her name. All that remains of her old identity is her burning fury and the drive to avenge her son at any cost. Immediately prior to the start of Touhou 15, Junko enlists the help of Heketia Lapislazuli, a goddess ruling over the new hell. She is very likely the same Hecate of Greek mythology. Heketia openly dislikes the Lunarians for their strict authoritarian ways, as she resents all forms of tyranny. But she does explicitly mention that she resents Chang'e and Hou Yi for killing one of her stars. This refers to the time that Hou Yi shot down the 9 suns. When this happened, not only did Earth cool down, but Hell itself also cooled down with it. Hell became less hell and more of a heck. Still, Hekatia's grudge against the Lunarians seems to stand more on her empathy for Junko than any practical reason. She brings her Hell Fairies, the Lampade, and provides them to Junko. Junko uses the fairies to besiege the lunar capital, having them play around and have fun outside. You see, the Lunarians are borderline immortal. This is due to living a strict, ritualistically pure lifestyle. It keeps them as far from the cycle of life and death as possible. This is part of why taking the Hyorai elixir is such a grave crime to the Lunarians, as it causes one to continuously emit impurity from the complete absence of death. The Lunarians remove themselves from both life and death in equal measure, to give themselves nigh immortality. True immortality is an aberration to the natural order, and thus, leaks out constant impurity, which endangers their eternal kingdom. As such, beings of pure life force like fairies are anathema to them. The mere presence of fairies on the moon threatens the very existence of the eternal kingdom. Imagine, if you will, dumping nuclear waste on your worst enemy's front lawn. That's Junko's plan, and it works very well. If that wasn't enough, Junko also uses her purification ability to further refine the raw life energy that all fairies are made of, and especially empowers one of Hikashia's strongest servants, the fairy Clownpiece, who can bring madness to all who see the light of her torch, including other fairies. This madness is really a berserker rage, amplifying their powers and abilities in battle. But all of this is really just a beneficial side effect of the true goal, to make the moon like Earth, namely, toxic and inhospitable to the Lunarians. The mere presence of the fairies on the moon threatens the immortality of the Lunarians, and their moon rabbit servants, who the Lunarians very explicitly treat as disposable tools, not people. Well, they're nowhere near capable of winning that fight. In response, the Lunarians temporarily pull their capital into the dream world to stave off their destruction. But this is not a permanent solution. Moreover, it wounds their all-too-fragile pride. As such, the Lunarians under Sagume launch their purification invasion of Gensokyo. And since the yokai of Gensokyo actually cannot even perceive the Pure Land's invasion and fight back, this forces the human heroines, and Raisen, a former moon rabbit turned impure earth rabbit, to take action. Gensokyo is essentially being held hostage by the Lunarians until the siege is lifted, and should the heroines fail, as a plan B, it will be made as pure as the surface of the moon, suitable for a new lunar capital, but not really suitable for things like, living beings, yokai, or anyone who isn't a Lunarian. In the end, however, the heroines do manage to defeat Junko. The canon ending, according to an interview with Zun, is that the player manages a no-miss clear, whether by using the checkpoint point device mode, or simply playing in Legacy or Classic mode without getting hit a single time. Junko acknowledges that she has eternity to get her revenge and agrees to lift the siege for now. She isn't really bothered by her defeat in the end, and even establishes relations with Ayante, as she has no grudge against those who turned against the capital. When Raisen attempts to get Junko to call off her attack in her extra stage ending, Junko says this when agreeing to Raisen's terms.
If instead of never attack again, you make it don't attack for a while, I'll accept.
Will we see Junko return as an antagonist for a round 2 against the moon? Perhaps or perhaps not, but I sincerely doubt we've seen the last of the Lunarians. And whatever moves they make, I'm sure Junko won't be far behind, waiting to continue her endless war in the name of vengeance for her innocent son. Because a mother's fury is all she has left.
My mortal enemy, Chang'e. Are you watching?
Thank you for watching this video. I hope to make more soon and grow in skill as I do so. I want to give a huge shout out to Mauthedoog of MYTHONICS for helping me with the thumbnail, and to Koopa Fortuna for lending me her voice. Both of them are linked below. Please go check them out. I'd love to discuss Toho with you. Yes, you. Did I miss something obvious? Should I have gone into more or less detail? Spend more time on personal theories, or stick to just the facts? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you'd like more content like this, check me out on Twitch, where I mostly stream Toho content, but also get into deep dives of world religion, mythology, horror, and other subjects. My final thoughts: Junko did nothing wrong. It isn't a bit, I mean it. Nuke the moon. Thank you for watching, and until next time, farewell.